becoming a part of what we're doing here on the broadcast and at Kingdom Voice. And as we share and as we encourage each of you to embrace the journey that you're on, and many of you are on that journey, you're engaging in this journey of truth. You're engaging in this process of finding your voice. And I just want to say that, as you engage, as you pursue that journey, um, I just want to be an encouragement to you. I just want to be a voice that is encouraging you and supporting what you're doing. Certainly don't want to be that voice that usurps what you're hearing from God. That clearly isn't what our endeavor is here, but to be that voice that is there to cheerlead you on, to champion your journey, and to really connect with you as you are on this journey is what we want to do. So I want to say thank you so very much in being a part of this broadcast, because it certainly wouldn't be what it is without you and your participation. So with that being said, I want to say to all of you, um, as you are, as we're engaging, you have any thoughts, any comments, I want to encourage you to share that, to really, yeah, just feel free to share your thoughts, your comments, your questions, your disagreements, whatever the case may be. Let's dialogue around those things. I'm going to talk today about something that I think is very, very important and very critical to your voice. And we're going to talk about that in depth. And I certainly invite all of your feedback and all of your questions and even your thoughts in this case. I want to hear what you think about what we're going to talk about today. And before we get into that, I want to invite all of you to reach out to us. You can reach us via email. You can do so at lcbellany@yahoo.com, lcbellany@yahoo.com. And I want to invite you to do so. That is my personal email. I look at every one of them. And when you send those emails in, I read them and respond to them certainly within 24 hours. So please feel free to reach out to us. If you'd like to reach us on the website, you can do so at rotruth.org. And we're looking to improve and upgrade the website to make the content more dynamic and more interactive. So feel free to reach us there as well. For those of you that take podcasts, you can reach us on the Spotify platform at Kingdom Talk on the Spotify platform. And so we would certainly love to hear from you, to have you to be a part of what we're doing and have you be a part of the participation with us in this journey of the kingdom. So just wanted to do a little housekeeping and really want to say thank you so very much for joining in. I want to talk to you today about something that I was just going about my daily activities, and this topic came across my process and my path, and it really caught my attention and grabbed my attention. And so today I want to talk about something that I think all of us can appreciate, and all of us that are voices in the kingdom benefit from greatly, because I assure you, it is not that way across the globe. Many countries, many people do not have the liberty to say the things we say, to say the things that I'm saying right here, right now on this broadcast, going across the airways to the different people that receive this. They don't have that liberty to do that in many countries. They don't have the liberty to oppose the government, to voice an opposition, to make and to declare an opposition voice. They don't have that liberty. And as such, I think it is very, very critical and important for us to understand and realize the role that the First Amendment plays in the kingdom. And that's why I titled today's message or today's broadcast, God is the author of the First Amendment. It didn't say God was the author of the Constitution, but God is in fact the author of the First Amendment. Okay. I will be bold, unapologetic to make that declaration, intentional, on purpose, and unapologetic. God authored that amendment. May not have been may not have penned the amendment. Men did that, but God was the author of it, the originator of it. It was God that inspired and stirred someone or someone's to make this a part of the fabric of what we call the United States of America. I know many of us in this highly partisan environment that we're living in right now, we look at things in very polarized perspective. But I think this is something we can all agree on. The fact that we have polarization is a testament to the First Amendment. The fact that we have open disagreements, heated debates, fearsome arguments is a testament to the First Amendment. So I stopped and thought about that. If the First Amendment is in fact God's plan, and I think it is for the proliferation of the gospel, if the First Amendment is in fact God's plan, then the kingdom reflects the same sentiment that everyone has a voice. I know my good friend Apostle Vincent Poole is watching, and one of the things that I've heard him champion as a part of the assignment that God has given to him is that you find your voice, that you declare your voice into the ethos, into the atmosphere, into the season, so that your voice can be heard. Now, guess what? Your voice may not be my voice. And as a matter of fact, I'll be even more bold to say your voice is not my voice. But your voice has no less significance in the kingdom than does mine or anyone else's. And it is important for you to make your voice heard. But there comes a time when you make that decision to make your voice heard that people will not agree with you. People will find what you say offensive at times. People will vehemently disagree and oppose what you have to say. And guess what? That's a good thing. Because public discourse, public debate, public discussion, public disagreements draws out the best that will survive. You know, when I look at nature, and when I look at what God has done in the creation, in what they have created, there is this philosophy called the survival of the fittest, meaning that nature will thin out itself, and the stronger, more resilient genetic makeups, plants, animals, humans, the strongest and the most resilient ideas and ideals ultimately rise to the top, ultimately find their way to the daylight. And the reason for that is, or the result of that is that the best ideas, the best philosophies, the best positions, the best ideologies rule and win the argument or win the day. So this is why it's imperative that the First Amendment, and we're going to take a look at that here in just a second. This is why it is imperative that we understand how critical and how important it is for us not only to have the First Amendment, but that we exercise our freedom given by the First Amendment. I want to take a minute and let's take a look at it. For those of you that aren't aware, you have heard the First Amendment, but you may not have ever read the First Amendment. You have, or it has been a long time since you've read the First Amendment. I want to take a minute and just recite and revisit the First Amendment, because you may not understand all that's in it. And sometimes, listen, things escape our memory and things escape us, and we hear a lot of rhetoric around it, and we latch on to the rhetoric. And it's always good at times to go back to the original source so that you can ground yourself in what it is that this issue actually pertains to. So let's take a look at it. So when you look at the First Amendment, well, first of all, it's a part of the Bill of Rights, which is enshrined in the Constitution of the United States. So when you hear someone talk about the Constitution gives me that right, sometimes they are referring to, or whenever they're referring to a right in the Constitution, they are referring to the Bill of Rights given to the citizens of these United States of America. And I know people will talk about the Constitution is a racist document, and it was put together by racists and what have you, and this, that, and the other. Listen, that argument can be had, but that's an argument for another day. The bottom line is, for what I want to present today, is it is our right as United States American citizens. This First Amendment is my right as a citizen of these United States of America. Let's read it, and it's on the screen. Congress, Amendment number 1, the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Let's talk about that for just a second. Congress shall make no law respecting, listen to this, an establishment of religion. No law does not say that we cannot interact religion and the government. It says the government cannot make a law establishing Christianity, establishing Hinduism, establishing Buddhism, establishing Islam, establishing Judaism as the law of the land. Okay, Congress cannot do that. And the reason, and I'm not going to get into a constitutional history lesson here, but I will say this: this was brought about by a resistance to the Church of England and its imposition, not influence, but imposition upon the British government, which the United States fled from and ultimately became. Or that citizens fled from and ultimately became the United States of America. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Listen to this. Or prohibiting the free exercise of religion. So you're not going to make a law establishing religion, but you're not also going to prohibit anyone from practicing anything that they call a religion. So there are many religions out there. The ones I just recited were probably the top 5 religions in the world. But there are many religions out there. And Congress shall not, or the government, the legislative body, shall not make a law prohibiting someone from worshiping a tree, worshiping the moon. You can't prohibit people from worshiping what they want to worship. Reading on. Or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Listen to me. So Congress cannot, our First Amendment right gives you and me the right to do what I'm doing right now, to stand on the street corner and preach the gospel, to stand in the corridors of public discourse and declare your love for God. No one can abridge that right. As a matter of fact, our country, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, was so close to infringing upon the Constitution of the First Amendment. And thank God for the Constitution and the First Amendment, which pushed back on previous administrations because they wanted to develop a ministry of truth, a government body to determine what was truth and what was false. You don't have that right. You don't have the right to decide what I believe is true and what I can say is true and what I can get up and declare and articulate and orate as truth. You don't have that right. I have the right to say it. You have the right to believe it or not to believe it. And that is the beauty of freedom of speech. There are some limitations to freedom of speech. I cannot say something to you. Say something that is blatantly false about you. I cannot say something that is blatantly false about you. That's defamation. I cannot put your life in danger by inciting violence against you. But the right to say and express my thoughts, my ideas, my intent is purely protected by the First Amendment. Apostle Bellamy, why are you going down this path? I'm going down this path because it is imperative for us to understand that in order for a free, democratic republic to thrive and survive, we cannot engage in what has now become known as the cancel culture. Okay? When someone says something that I disagree with or even offends me, they have the right to say that. And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But I want to go back and I want to just touch on and read this in full without any commentary, just so that we can establish what the First Amendment says. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And for those of us that are of African descent here in America, were it not for the First Amendment, the civil rights movement would have had no traction and gained no ground in this country. It was this amendment that gave the leaders of the civil rights movement the authority and the ability, or the opportunity. I'm not going to say the ability. They always had the ability, but gave them the authority and the opportunity to petition the government of the grievances of racism and of segregation and of inequality that the African American community was being subjected to. And they won their argument. I am here today because the civil rights movement, given the authority and the freedom to petition the government for its grievances of racism and discrimination and segregation, was able to proliferate and become what it has become today. So when you hear people talk about and trying to cancel free speech, fight against that. Because when they cancel that free speech, understand you're going to say something at some point in time that will offend someone, and you will be the target of cancellation. I just want to encourage us today to understand that the freedoms and the liberties that we enjoy in this country are not shared by everyone, everywhere. Even some of the people and some of the countries that we think are in line with what we share and experience here in the United States of America don't have the privileges that we have. I was listening to our vice president recently, and Vice President Vance had the opportunity to address the Security Council of Germany, and he took the liberty to share what I thought was a very insightful and a very powerful speech. I took some excerpts from that, and I want to play that for you. I want to share that with you, and then I want to give my thoughts on it. And I don't, well, you all know that follow this broadcast know that I don't do reaction videos. I've never done a reaction video, but I thought this was apropos today because the First Amendment that I believe God instituted within the fabric of our constitutional republic, our democratic republic, is so vital to the proliferation of the kingdom that God enshrined it in the fabric of our nation. But I want to warn and caution us, everyone does not share the liberty and enjoy the liberty that we enjoy here in this country. So I'm going to play for you right quick. It's about a 7-minute video. We're going to listen to it all the way through. And I want you to listen to some of the things that Vice President Vance is saying to the leaders of Europe. It's taking place in Germany, but it is the leaders of Europe. And for those of you that would like to see the entire speech, I would encourage you to look it up on YouTube and listen to the entirety of the speech. I found it to be very, very impactful and a very powerful speech that is centered on the freedom of speech. Listen to what he has to say.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany too. Now, these cavalier statements are shocking to American ears. For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values. Everything from our Ukraine policy to digital censorship is billed as a defense of democracy. But when we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard. And I say ourselves because I fundamentally believe that we are on the same team. We must do more than talk about democratic values, we must live them. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. And in the interest of comedy, my friends, but also in the interest of truth, I will admit that sometimes the loudest voices for censorship have come not from within Europe, but from within my own country, where the prior administration threatened and bullied social media companies to censor so-called misinformation. Misinformation like, for example, the idea that coronavirus had likely leaked from a laboratory in China. Our own government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth. And I really do believe that allowing our citizens to speak their mind will make them stronger still. Which, of course, brings us back to Munich, where the organizers of this very conference have banned lawmakers representing populist parties on both the left and the right from participating in these conversations. Now, again, we don't have to agree with everything or anything that people say. But when people represent, when political leaders represent an important constituency, it is incumbent upon us to at least participate in dialogue with them. Now, to many of us on the other side of the Atlantic, it looks more and more like old entrenched interests hiding behind ugly Soviet-era words like misinformation and disinformation, who simply don't like the idea that somebody with an alternative viewpoint might express a different opinion or, God forbid, vote a different way or, even worse, win an election. But what no democracy, American, German, or European, will survive is telling millions of voters that their thoughts and concerns, their aspirations, their pleas for relief are invalid or unworthy of even being considered. Democracy rests on the sacred principle that the voice of the people matters. There's no room for firewalls. You either uphold the principle or you don't. Europeans, the people, have a voice. European leaders have a choice. And my strong belief is that we do not need to be afraid of the future. You can embrace what your people tell you, even when it's surprising, even when you don't agree. And if you do so, you can face the future with certainty and with confidence, knowing that the nation stands behind each of you. And that, to me, is the great magic of democracy. It's not in these stone buildings or beautiful hotels. It's not even in the great institutions that we have built together as a shared society. To believe in democracy is to understand that each of our citizens has wisdom and has a voice. And if we refuse to listen to that voice, even our most successful fights will secure very little. As Pope John Paul II In my view, one of the most extraordinary champions of democracy on this continent or any other once said, "Do not be afraid." We shouldn't be afraid of our people, even when they express views that disagree with their leadership. Thank you all. Good luck to all of you. God bless you.
I thought that Vice President Vance was very forthright in his assertion and declaration of how important it is for us not only to enjoy the freedom of speech and the right to that freedom, but to express that freedom. If you heard what he said and talked about Great Britain, the cradle of Western democracy, is now arresting people for saying something that disagrees with the government's position, for praying, not obstructing, but praying about an issue that the government supports, or against an issue that the government supports. Arresting people for social media posts. I want us to understand how powerful the First Amendment is to us as American citizens. I'm not here today to talk about and to give a political speech. I'm here to talk about the kingdom of heaven and how we as kingdom heirs and citizens benefit from the First Amendment, and how we have this liberty here to be able to say what we've heard God say, and let the people that hear us decide whether or not they believe it came from God. That is the beauty and the security of our First Amendment right. And this is why I say God is the author of the First Amendment. In particular, where it comes to me having the right and the freedom and the liberty and the authority from them to say that Yahweh is the God of all creation, that Yeshua is Lord. I can say that with the right and the assurance of our government that no one can abridge my right to do so. That, beloved, is not shared by everyone. You heard Vice President Vance talk a little bit about in those excerpts from his speech. And by the way, again, I encourage all of you that want to hear that entirety. It's about a 20-minute speech, and he talks in depth about the things that take place and took place and that are taking place across Europe. I know there are many different political views that are watching this broadcast, many different religious views that are watching this broadcast. The one thing I want to emphasize is no matter your political view, no matter your religious view, no matter your philosophical view, you have the right to have that view. But just as we have and you have the right to have that view, someone else has the right to share a different view. Which view should be embraced? That's where the public debate, the public discourse, the public discussion comes into play. Even when it comes to things of the kingdom, I may approach the kingdom from a perspective that I have been given. That doesn't mean that I have all of the right way or even the right way. This is why we should open ourselves and open our conversations to others and the discourse that others may bring to our conversation, and allow them to share so that we can hear and experience a different perspective. I am absolutely convinced that what God says to me, God intends for me to embrace and carry out. But what I'm also convinced of is that what God says to me, there may be something that someone else can add to what God says. Or when God decides to change and alter my direction, God may choose to do that through someone else. If I silence every dissenting voice, I shut myself off from progress. I incarcerate myself in an echo chamber, only talking and receiving from people that sound like me, that are saying what I am saying. And the kingdom doesn't thrive that way. No system thrives that way. The kingdom thrives when opposing, opposite, different perspectives are given the right or the freedom to express that, and let the strongest, most vibrant, most productive opinions and perceptions and perspectives rule the day. This is one of the challenges that religion faces. Is religion incarcerates itself in an echo chamber. This is why I embrace the kingdom and why I advocate for the kingdom in such a way. This is why I advocate for the kingdom to be an open discourse, so that all voices can be heard, so that all voices can share in the overall discussion. It's important for us to recognize, beloved, how important it is that the First Amendment to our Constitution or our Bill of Rights makes the kingdom more vibrant here than it is in many, many other different places. Imagine in the cradle of democracy, a man on the corner outside of the zone that he was supposed to be in, simply praying in silence on behalf of an aborted child that he and his ex-girlfriend aborted several years prior, is now, number one, forbidden to do so, and number two, arrested for doing so. Imagine how the retreat from the rights of citizens to express themselves has eroded. We've got to be mindful, even in our country, even in the United States. And I'm going to be transparent here, and I'm going to be very open. We're at the height of the coronavirus pandemic. I chose not to be vaccinated. I chose to express my freedom of thought, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and I chose not to be vaccinated. I could go into all kinds of reasons about why I chose not to be vaccinated and what brought me to that decision. I can go into all of that, but that is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that I chose a certain path for myself. I can't tell you, or yes, I can, the pressure, the social pressure, the threat of losing my job that was placed upon me. So much so that in my office, when I went into the office, I had to sequester myself in my office. And and when I was in my office, my door had to be 90% closed. And on my door, I had to put a sign that said unvaccinated. unvaccinated. Why? Because I chose to do something that at the time was socially unpopular. Fast forward to today. Now we are understanding that a lot of the restrictions and a lot of the propaganda that was promoted during that time was just that, propaganda. Because our government had decided that there was a certain way the citizens were going to behave. And if you did not behave that way, you were persona non grata. You were the problem. You were the villain. How can, oh, and by the way, anyone that said anything about to the contrary of what the government was saying, they lost their medical licenses, they lost their jobs. Military people were banished from the military. They were forced to resign from the military. People were forced to and forcibly removed from their jobs. Businesses were forced to close, all because they chose not to do what the government was imposing upon them. And they did that all through public pressure and public shaming. We have a right that has been granted to us first by God and enshrined in our Bill of Rights. It is called the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights, where our freedom of speech, our right to address our government for grievances is guaranteed. And again, for those of us that are of African descent, that are African Americans here in this country, were it not for the First Amendment, the civil rights movement would have never, ever happened. The government would have shut it down. And this is why Dr. King and Malcolm X and all of the civil rights leaders made their voices heard. Now let's talk about differences. We pay homage to Dr. King in a very, and rightfully so. We pay homage to Dr. King. But let me help you understand something. Without a Malcolm X, there would be no Martin Luther King. Malcolm X was a diametrically opposed opinion about how to get to the justice that both were seeking. Thank God for Malcolm. Thank God for Martin. Because without both of them, I don't think the civil rights legislation would have ever come to pass. This is why you can't silence one voice. You have to allow that voice to speak, but let the voice that the people gravitate to rule the day. And that's what happened. Malcolm doesn't get all of the accolades, but he was just as significant in the civil rights movement coming to its ultimate conclusion as Malcolm was. And what happened to both of them? We know that they were both assassinated. It is important, and I want to say that as we, as kingdom citizens, look at what it is that we have been assigned to do, I want you to understand, and I want you to really be encouraged, that your right to do that is protected by the First Amendment. The authority to do that comes from God. And by doing so, you promote the kingdom. You promote the assignment that God has given to you. That's important, beloved. That's important. Again, thank you all so much for your comments, and I see several of you, Jolynn and Lola. Thank you so much. And again, I want to say to all of you, feel free to share your thoughts. I would like to dialogue around this, and hear what you have to say as we wrap this up today. But again, the First Amendment right, the freedom of speech, freedom of press, the right to redress the government, to address your grievances, and for public assembly, or what we call now demonstrations, to demonstrate against the government. They have that right. I see people now in this polarized political environment that we're currently in. People are protesting the loss of jobs, protesting DOGE, and protesting of some of the changes that are being made in government, and protesting a variety of things. They have that right. Let them protest. Let them protest. Let them be heard. It is when you get into the cancel culture, when you get into those that want to cancel you and silence you and shut you down and shout you down and all of those things, that's when you begin to lose. You begin to incarcerate yourself in an echo chamber. Echo chambers will never allow you to progress, because echo chambers, by definition, only want to hear what they are accustomed to hearing. Anytime you speak something outside of the purview of your echo chamber will discharge you. That's why I love to hear the voices. Even in our apostolic council, we have a variety of voices that share what they are hearing God say. A lot of it, and some of it rather, and sometimes a lot of it, I've never heard before. It's outside of my echo chamber. And this is why I make a concerted effort to hear what they have to say. Let me give you a bit of an insight here. Listen to this very closely. Whenever someone wants to give you advice, here is my philosophical approach to advice. Every piece of advice is at least worth listening to. Listen to what the advice has to say. I didn't say you have to follow the advice, but you need to at least listen to what the advice has to say. Why? Because by listening to it, you at least can understand it. And it may be beneficial. But if you don't listen to that advice, because it may be coming from a place you don't like, you'll never know whether there's any benefit to it. You may be passing up the opportunity to get out of the quandary and the quagmire that you're in. You may be passing up the opportunity to take that next step that you're so longing to take. Why? Because you didn't listen to the advice. You didn't at least hear what the advice had to say. There's a lot of advice that I get that I don't adhere to, but I always make an effort to listen and hear what they have to say. Because then, and only then, do I get to push the envelope of my echo chamber. Do I get to move my border? Do I get to expand my horizon? This is why, beloved, we cannot get it caught up in canceling people and shutting people down and closing our ears because someone is saying something that I don't like, or someone is saying something that I do like, but because it's coming from them, I don't want to listen to it and I don't want to hear it. Allow yourself to step outside of your echo chamber. God is the author of the First Amendment. I thank God every day that I have this opportunity to say what I'm saying to you, to be on this platform, to articulate the things that I'm saying. And some of you disagree with what I'm saying, and that is a good thing. You know what a disagreement means? A disagreement means that you are pushing me beyond where I am willing to go. That's a good thing. Why? Because you're pushing me to the border. You're pushing me, you're forcing me to think beyond where I am. Again, I may disagree with it and I may not follow it. I may reject it, but you caused me to think about it. You caused me to consider it. And if you don't do that, and if I don't allow you to do that, I incarcerate myself and I condemn myself to my echo chamber. Let's take a look at some of the thoughts here, and I'm going to put those up on the screen. Lady Jolynn says, totalitarianism, communism is rising. It hates spiritual beliefs because they cannot control it. Absolutely. When you start talking and you start giving the people the right to say what the people believe, you do a number of things. You advance the government, you advance the society, you advance technology, you advance ideas, you advance progress. When you allow people to say, but totalitarianism and communism forces you into thinking the way a small group of leaders thinks. I want to say this, and again, at the expense or at the risk of turning this into a political conversation, which I do not want to do, which is not the intent here, but I do want to say this. This is one of the things, when you start succumbing to totalitarianism because they're saying what you like and what you want to hear, and they are silencing the things that you don't want to hear. That sounds good. That feels good for now. But just as soon as you embrace that mindset, the conversation will change to something you don't want to hear and that you don't like. And because you have shut down and participated in the shutting down of a dissenting voice, now your voice is the voice that is being shut down. Your dissent is the one that is being ignored. This is why we have to allow people to voice their grievances and allow those grievances to be heard. They may not be adopted. They may ultimately be shut down, but they were heard. One of the things of our Constitution that we are granted is the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We are not guaranteed happiness. We are guaranteed to pursue happiness. We are guaranteed life and liberty. Again, a part of our Bill of Rights. The pursuit of happiness. Listen, no one is immune to offense. You are going to be offended by what someone else says. Someone may call me the N-word. That's their right. It's offensive, it's abhorrent, but it is their right. And I don't want the government to shut that down. It's hateful. I don't want the government to shut that down. It's mean-spirited. I don't want the government to shut that down. Because I want to know at least who hates me. Now I can see and avoid them that hate me. If you force them into a closet, now you have incognito hatred running around all over the place. I truly, truly don't want that to be shut down. I want it to be heard. And I want others to hear it so that they too can know. I think the greater progress comes from social and public pressure rather than legislative and governmental pressure. But I digress. Lola said this, and I'm going to share this with us. Hang on, Lola. I think, bear with me here. I may have to read it from the sidebar, but I did want to put it up. So it should be within the kingdom. Within the kingdom, encounters with God are different and unique, and no one has the right to tell anyone that what they've learned or heard from their encounters are obsolete or, and that's where I lose it. Bear with me here. What they heard or saw is theirs to hold, and none, absolutely no one, has the power or rights to change that or go against that or separate themselves from that person because they don't believe or speak or sound like them. That's why I stay away, because it's been done to me. And Lola, listen, one of the things, and to everyone I say this, one of the things that I have embraced as a part of my growth and maturation and in my journey, let me put it that way, is when it comes to what I believe and what I hold dear, I hold it dear until it changes within me. Because someone else vehemently disagrees with what I believe, that's something they have to deal with. Okay? That's something I'm not going to allow them to make me feel bad for what I believe. All that means is I believe something different from them. They may have a number of people on their side that believes like them, that disagrees with me. That's good. But now they get to hear what I believe that disagrees with them, and it may provoke them to consider what I'm talking about. So I've learned to say things and to share things, not with the intent to change your mind, but with the intent to express my position and let you do with it as you please. I choose not to allow my emotional support for that thing to overshadow my right to present that thing. So if I get offended because you don't believe what I say or you don't accept what I say, then I'll take what I say and I'll go off. No, I'm going to say it, and I'm going to continue to say it until God changes it within me. I believe and I live by this philosophy. When what you believe cannot answer the question that is being asked, then it is time to believe something else. I'm going to say that again. When what you believe cannot answer the question that is being asked, then it is time for you to believe something else. An example: if I believe in a social issue to the degree that it is passionate within me, and then all of a sudden I get presented with a scenario that what I believe can't respond to, then I now am forced with a real situation. One, what I've been presented with is superior to what I believe because I can't address what I've been presented with. So I'm not saying that I have to adapt what I'm being presented with. I'm saying that I need to change what I believe to allow what I believe to address what is being presented. I've got to go and I've got to get an understanding as to what it is that that was just presented to me represents. And I need to either embrace it or come up with a superior address for that thing, or for a superior argument against that thing. I'm not saying make something up. I'm saying gain and gather more information and insight. This is why it is so imperative for us to not hide in an echo chamber. Lola said, thanks for sharing this because it's important to educate the people in the kingdom. Thank you, Lola. I appreciate you, and I really appreciate your comment there. That means a lot to me. I really do. Apostle Vince says then, hey, brother, how you doing? It is actually healthy to hear something different than your own opinion or thoughts. It is healthy. It grows your intellect. It grows and stimulates you. One of the things that I've done, and I've never been a big book reader. I just never have. I've gained and gathered my information from selective reading and informational consumption. That's kind of how I've grown my intellect. But now, as a I guess a more mature man, I've really begun to read thoughts and ideas and opinions and philosophies of others, and I've got to say that I wish I had done that sooner. It's just an open public admission. I wish I had done that sooner because I get a chance to hear what others are saying, that, and I don't agree with everything that others are saying. It allows me to formulate an opinion and formulate a position about something that I disagree with, because now I understand what that position is that I disagree with. And too many times we knee-jerk react to a position or an issue, not fully understanding and recognizing the depth of that issue. And that's a flaw. That's something we should avoid. Absolutely avoid. Lola says this exactly. They don't want to hear anything that's not coming from their, you use the word click, Lola, I say echo chamber, or the voice that doesn't sound or align with their own. This happens when the so-called kingdom and ecclesia, and I lost it. Oh, so-called within the so-called kingdom and ecclesia. And that is absolutely correct. And this is why I champion, Lola. You're right. Many people don the moniker of kingdom and ecclesia, and at the same time, they are confined to their little religious echo chamber. They see the kingdom a certain way. They embrace the kingdom a certain way. And for them, that's the only way. And when the kingdom is so vastly expansive, then their little echo chamber, they lose out on growth and expansion because they have been incarcerated within their clique or their echo chamber. That's the challenge. Let me say this as I get ready to close. Think of the kingdom as a body. It's like the human anatomy, for example. There are so many systems within the human anatomy. And then there are so many members within those systems. You have the nervous system, the cardiovascular system, the skeletal system, the blood flow. I forget what system that comes under. But you have all of these, the muscular system. You have all of these systems within the human anatomy. And each one of those systems has a different focus. But think about it, if the human body was totally controlled by any one of those systems, the rest of the body would be rendered dysfunctional. Okay? The kingdom is very much like that. There are many of us that are focused in a certain area. We are a part of a certain one of the systems in many instances. But we can't allow our focus to prohibit another focus, because the kingdom is bigger than your assignment. And it is the assignment of others and the assignment of me and the assignment of someone else that all works together to make the kingdom what it is. And this is why we have to allow the kingdom to be what it is. Amen. I hope you really got something out of the broadcast today. God is the author of the First Amendment. I truly believe that. I truly believe that. I said something else on this broadcast, and I will repeat it here just as a sidebar to this topic today. Not only is God the author of the First Amendment, but I also believe that free enterprise is the kingdom's economic system. I'm going to say that again. Free enterprise is the kingdom's economic system. We'll talk about that in a later broadcast, but just to suffice me to give this one little caveat here, or this one little note here. The greatest economic system, I believe, on the planet is free enterprise, or capitalism, as it is often called, as opposed to socialism or communism or dictatorships. The free exchange of ideas, services, goods, and skills allow us and has allowed us to build the most vibrant, the most dynamic, the most resilient economy this earth has ever seen, all the way back to Egypt, all the way back to the dynasties. Nothing compares to what has been dubbed capitalism has been able to achieve. Nothing. History records it as such. They might have had more money, but the vibrance of the society was limited to a handful of any of the other types of economic systems out there. I simply say that to say the kingdom of heaven seeks the kingdom of heaven as God has implemented it is so expansive that no one person, position, ideology can encompass it. And we have to allow all of them, and you be the judge. Yeah, I said it. You judge whether or not it is of value to you. If not, move on. If it is, embrace it. And that's how the kingdom thrives. Well, listen, beloved, thank you so very much. Thank you, Christina. It's my daughter-in-law, y'all. We have great conversations. We talk all the time and talk about opposing viewpoints. She brings a viewpoint to me that I find refreshing. I really do. And I hope you don't mind, Christina. We don't always agree, but I always embrace her perspective on things. And I think she does the same for me. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for being a part of it. And I hope the broadcast today really allowed you to hear something today that encouraged you. Amen. Until next time, I want to ask you to be well, be blessed, and remember, exercise your right to free speech. God bless you. We'll see you again next Sunday morning.